Good evening and welcome. Welcome to the University of Massachusetts, Boston. I am honored to welcome all of you here this evening to the first of two Mayoral forums that they're going to be held on this campus before the election in November 5th. And as I'm doing, we're going to ask everybody to turn off those cell phones and all the pings and all those things, and mine was just pinging. We don't want it to be a distraction during this event tonight. I want to give a special welcome to all of our friends that are here tonight, but our friends from the Boston Foundation and 90.9 WBUR, including tonight's moderators, Bob Oakes, host of Morning Edition, and Meghna Chakrabarti, host of Radio Boston. Together with our College of Advancing and Professional Studies and also the McCormick Graduate School of Policy and Global Studies, they've worked to bring this forum to our campus and to all of you tonight. I'd also like to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your lives to be here and being part of this wonderful event tonight, including people like Jim Brett from the New England Council and others who are here. And of course, I want to thank all the candidates that are here for taking the time to allow us to get to know them a little better and get to know them we are prepared to do tonight. We need to get to know them before next week's primary, and so we're glad to be able to host that opportunity here on campus tonight. Can we get a round of applause in advance for our candidates? They want to serve our city. They want to serve our communities so much that they are out here at forums like this just about every other night. And it seems that they've been doing this for months. Thank you, candidates. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's great to see all of you. Our students, our faculty, and our staff are proud to be witnesses to the important conversations our City of Boston mayoral candidates will be having tonight. There are a number of them here already, and there's numbers of students in the audience tonight, and so we're so grateful to welcome them here as well. You can also watch this at home tonight as we stream live on www.umb.edu and listen live on 90.9 WBUR. As residents of this great city and community members of its only public university, we're following this race closely, and we enjoy a close relationship with City Hall and our current Mayor Tom Menino, class of 1988. And we're looking forward to forging a similarly strong relationship with the next mayor. And so, who will that person be? What will happen next week? Will this be the forum that helps you, our voting audience, narrow down this field? Let's get right to it. I'd like to start by introducing Mary Jo Meisner, Vice President for Communications, Community Relations, and Public Affairs for the Boston Foundation. Mary Jo.
Thank you very much, Keith. I am Mary Jo Meisner, Vice President for Communications and Public Affairs at the Boston Foundation, and I'm delighted also to welcome you here this evening. We are delighted to partner with UMass Boston, the McCormick School, the College of Advancing and Professional Studies, and WBUR for this forum. As many of you may know, the Boston Foundation is Boston's community foundation. We were founded almost 100 years ago, and we help donors achieve high-impact philanthropy. We provide major funding for nonprofit organizations, and we serve as a civic leader and a convener. And it is that convening role that brings us here tonight. We host a number of public forums throughout the year on important issues facing Boston and the region, but there, we think, is no more important issue than the election of the next mayor of Boston, and as a result, we're happy to be here. In addition, the foundation is the home of the Boston Indicators Project, which has been a primary data resource for Greater Boston for more than a decade. And it is with that in mind that we talked about the framing for this forum about healing a growing divide in the growing amount of income inequality in Boston and its harmful effect. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to my friend Richard Chacon, Executive Director of News Content at WBR, who will tell you more about the broadcast this evening.
For 20 years, the city of Boston has had the same mayor, Thomas Menino. The city has undergone historic change in the 2 decades that Mayor Menino has led its government. But Boston continues to evolve, and as it does, a new leader will soon take over, one of the 12 people running for mayor.
Good evening, and welcome to the University of Massachusetts Boston for a 2-hour forum with the candidates for mayor of Boston. The forum is being broadcast on 90.9 WBUR, Boston's NPR news station, and video is streaming at umb.edu and tbf.org. I'm Meghna Chakrabarty.
And I'm Bob Oakes. Coming up, we'll hear from this large field of candidates on many of the challenges and opportunities facing this city. We'll discuss the diversity of Boston, doing business here, economic disparity, and of course, the city's future.
Our forum is co-sponsored by the Boston Foundation and the University of Massachusetts Boston's John W. McCormick Graduate School of Policy and Global Studies and the College of Advancing and Professional Studies. Now, as we begin, we ask all of you who are here in person, first of all, we're grateful to see you all. We ask you to hold your applause for most of the night, and especially now as the candidates in this historic election each introduce themselves.
Bill.
Okay. Hi, my name is Bill Walsack. I'm the second person on the ballot. I've spent my life as an urban innovator, bringing opportunity to Boston's neighborhoods, and I look forward to this discussion about the future of the city of Boston.
I'm John Connolly. I'm a Boston Public School parent. I'm a former teacher. I'm chair of the Boston City Council's Education Committee. I'm running to transform the Boston Public Schools because we owe every child a high-quality education. And we will have safer streets and a better economy if we have better public schools.
Hello, my name is John Barrows. I am a former school committee member, former executive director of the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative, and I've had the honor to work in that neighborhood to help turn around a section of Boston with affordable housing, small business development, youth and resident development. And I look forward to bringing that to all of Boston.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Golar-Ritchie, candidate for mayor. I have served this community of Dorchester and the city of Boston for many years, 2 decades. I've been involved in government and politics, starting with my in the legislature, where I served in the House of Representatives and chaired the Housing and Urban Development Committee. Then moved on to work with Mayor Tom Menino as Chief of Housing and Director of the Department of Neighborhood Development, where we were able to build 18,000 units of housing, with a third of them being affordable to low and moderate income people. I've worked with Governor Patrick, and also my passion, which is young people, those who have left high school without their diplomas, to bring them back into the education experience where they can get on a path towards a career or college while they're earning opportunity and leadership and skills in the trades. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Felix Royo. I'm proud to serve as your city councilor with the honor of representing all of Boston's neighborhoods. My story doesn't begin with me. I always begin it with my parents, who moved to Boston speaking very little English, looking for opportunities in their life. Like many families, they needed help. So when I was born, I was brought home to a subsidized, affordable housing apartment in the South End. From there, they bought a home in Hyde Park. But it wasn't without our tough nights. I know what it's like to use the oven as a source of heat. I know what it's like to boil water on the stovetop, because that's how you get a hot bath. But it was in those moments that my parents taught me a very important lesson. It is never about how much money you have. It is always about how many people's lives are better because you existed. I've lived my life towards that lesson. As an organizer for janitors, the very janitors who cleaned the building we're in today. When we got there, they were making $9 an hour. Today, they make $16 an hour. They had no benefits. Today they have full family health insurance. And they have the respect and dignity that they deserve. And as your city councilor, I've continued to work as an organizer with our communities, and knowing that we're stronger when we work together. My vision is a Boston where everyone has access to opportunities. We get there by understanding that not everybody's Boston is the same Boston. 1 in 5 Bostonians live in poverty. 40% of all Latino children live in poverty. 35% of all black children live in poverty. And 1 in 3 of all Asians live in poverty. The next mayor has to provide a plan to create pathways out of poverty for the many Bostonians living there today. We have to close the achievement gap, and we have to make sure that everyone has a voice in the direction of this city. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Charles Clemens. You may know me as Brother Charles, the founder of Touch 106.1 FM. It's been on the air for 7 years. I'm also a former Boston police officer, correctional officer, special police officer. While doing that, I've started 5 successful businesses. I've been self-employed since the age of 14. And out of those 5 successful businesses, I've hired thousands of Boston residents. Of those thousands of Boston residents, 75% of them had quarries. I believe in giving people a chance. And out of those 75%, 100 have gone on to start their own business. I inspire people. I create things out of nothing. I'm also the founder of the New England Urban Music Awards, and I'm the only candidate to put a badge on that has walked the beats of Boston to serve and protect. And that same passion I will bring to City Hall. I cannot be bought. I'm the first name on the ballot, Charles Clemens.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Ross. I'm a city councilor here in Boston. I am the former president of the Boston City Council. I'm looking to bring innovative ideas to improve our schools, to create jobs, and to modernize government. My values come from, frankly, my parents. My father is a Holocaust survivor. He is the proudest American I've ever met, and he has taught me the value of the American dream and the need to pass it on. My mother is an openly gay 71-year-old woman who has also taught me that we don't judge people by how they look or who they love, but simply how they treat other people. It's great to be with you this evening.
Hi, my name is Marty Walsh. I am state representative from Dorchester for 16 years and currently the chairman of the Committee on Ethics in the House of Representatives. I'm running for mayor because I have a record of accomplishments. I've voted on issues like education reform, which today was in the Boston Globe, of our level 4 schools being brought up 2 and 3 different levels. also working on issues around economic development. And I want to take this experience to City Hall and to be able to use this to continue the great work that Mayor Menino has done and strengthen our economy.
Thank you all. And we should note that a few of the other candidates, we presume, will be filtering in as the conversation goes on here as well. We have under 2 hours to discuss the future of the city of Boston and the economic divide between its residents. The statistics, we've heard some of them already, are rather eye-opening. The top 5% of Boston residents earn a quarter of the city's income, while the bottom fifth earn just under 2%. White Bostonians have a per capita income that's more than double that for Black, Asian, and Latino residents.
And while more than 60% of white Bostonians hold a 4-year college degree or higher, less than a quarter of Black and Latino residents do. The cost of housing cripples some families, and in parts of Boston, travel a matter of blocks, and the average income can jump or fall by tens of thousands of dollars. So tonight we explore the candidates' plans to address these issues and others, and here's the structure we'll use to cover as much ground as possible in the next 2 hours or so. Megna and I will pose a question to each of you. That candidate will have 1 minute to respond. After that, we'll take 4 or 5 minutes to hear responses and discussions from anyone else. So it'll be pretty free-flowing, but we'll be watching the clock, and we're going to probably, if we have to, cut off some of the conversations to move on to other topics.
So the 15 seconds you had earlier might have stretched a little bit, but now we're really going to hold you to that 1 minute time. We'll begin with the first question, and randomly selected, it goes to Bill Walczak. An estimated 30% of school-age children in Boston live in poverty. They go to school hungry, are sometimes cold in the winter, and may not have any place to study. What can the city and you as mayor do to ensure these children learn and thrive?
Well, I'm Bill Walczak, and as you probably know, I'm the co-founder of 2 high schools in Boston, and so I deeply understand the conditions in which many of our impoverished children are going to school. I think it's really important that our schools start acting much more holistically about the conditions that are happening in our school children, in our neighborhoods. Many, if not most, of our children in our Boston public schools are living in poverty or near poverty. And as a result, the schools need to be looking at things from a completely different perspective rather than just the basic educational components. We need to make sure that health care, social services, and food is available through the Boston public schools. And I firmly believe that what we need to do is start reforming that with, first of all, making sure that the food is good. The food right now is brought in from Long Island. It is not good food. It is oftentimes breakfast is considered French toast dipped into corn syrup. And obviously what we need to do is make sure that from the beginning to the end of the school day, we are participating in their lives and making sure that they are able to get a much better educational experience that includes allowing them to live good lives.
Okay, so let's open that up for a couple minutes of discussion. Who thinks that the Boston public school system is equipped to approach the lives of children in that more holistic manner, as Bill Walczak said? John Connolly.
Thanks, Magna. So my daughter goes to the Trotter School on Humboldt Ave in Roxbury, and 4 years ago this school was on the brink of closure. Fights happening every day and some of the worst test scores you could imagine. Yesterday, the state said it's a level 1 school, which means it's one of the best in the school district here in Boston. We know what we have to do, but we're not doing it at every school. We need fully staffed social, emotional, health support services for every student. And Bill Walczak's right. We need to run food pantries where necessary, focus on healthy eating in our schools, but the holistic approach, because so many of our children go to school broken because of poverty, and if you're broken, you're not ready to learn. So our schools have to be better equipped to meet the needs of every child.
Charlotte Gola-Ritchie.
As mayor, I would look forward to encouraging stronger, better partnerships with the private and the nonprofit sector. And we know we have thousands of nonprofit organizations in the city who provide services and are working to combat poverty. I would like to see the city of Boston, particularly the school department, establish an improved database with all of these partners so that we would know the services that are offered, whether it's around housing assistance and help with families so that they could avoid foreclosure, whether it's support around job search and training, whatever the case may be, helping parents learn English as their second language, and so on. We need to do better at coordinating services that already exist in the city.
John Barros, and then I'll move my way down the table here.
I was proud to stand there yesterday with Governor Patrick as he announced the progress that had been made in Boston Public Schools, particularly that the Trotter School and the Orchard Garden Pilot School were going from level 4 schools to level 1 schools. But I think, given the work that we did at the Orchard Garden Pilot School, it takes more than a school to make sure that we can meet the challenges of poverty and teach our children. What we did at Orchard Gardens was to bring the whole community around the school. And when we asked the question, how many children at Orchard Gardens are homeless? And they gave us the number of 42 to 48. We had to coordinate the housing services of the city to those families to make sure that those children can come to school ready to learn. The city has to step in and design a city that has healthy and strong neighborhoods and support our families so we don't put all of the social ills of our city and poverty at the foot of the teacher. The school district can't do it on its own. The city's got to remove blight and decrease poverty. 22% of our families right now are under the federal poverty line, and we've got to improve that.
Thank you. Marty Walsh.
We need a mayor who's going to be tough. And I'm proud to say that in 2010, I took the vote to bring education reform to the school department in the city of Boston. And in doing that, we're able to turn around the Orchard Gardens and the Trotter. We also have to look at doing wraparound services in all our schools, not just underperforming schools. And I think the biggest thing that some of these families have is they need an employment opportunity. And the next mayor of Boston needs to be able to make tough decisions in the school department as well as offer more economic development opportunities for families.
Arroyo, please.
Thank you. I very much appreciate your question. I'm a product of the Boston Public Schools. In fact, my parents had 5 children, and all of us went to the Boston Public Schools. All my nieces and nephews attend the Boston Public Schools. My mother, my sister, and my wife are Boston Public School teachers. I believe that all the candidates on stage want the schools to do better. But I'm the only candidate who's released a plan on how we create pathways out of poverty and into the middle class. I understand something innately, that if we want to close the achievement gap in our Boston Public Schools, then we have got to tackle poverty in our city. The two are completely related. In fact, you cannot take them apart. We have to create better jobs. We have to turn bad jobs into good jobs. We have to connect Bostonians to the jobs that exist today. And to close the achievement gap, we have got to bring universal preschool. We have to extend the school day to bring arts and theater and phys ed and sports to every school. And we have to make sure that our high schools are working. And yes, we need mental health professionals in every school in the city of Boston.
Who wants to you get 15 seconds.
Okay, I appreciate that. When you have the breakdown of the family, you have the breakdown of the community. And we're in a world where we have the haves and the have-nots. We understand that more services are needed in our community. It's about doing the right thing. When you need more services in that community, you provide more services.
All right, we're going to move on to the next question.
But first, let me say, in case anyone in our television audience or in the audience in front of us here is wondering, we're going from left to right. That was the random order that we drew things in, which is why it seems like we're going in less than random order, but this is, in fact, quite random. And since now you're all warmed up, your throats are all warmed up, we're going to snap it up a little bit, and we're going to be a little tighter on time. Our next question is for John Connolly. Out of more than 2,000 Boston Public School graduates in 2010, more than 600 went to one of the community colleges in the city, Roxbury or Bunker Hill, to begin their higher education. How would you work with those institutions to better prepare Boston students for college success and post-college employment?
So one of the big problems with that fact is that many of our students who end up in that community college end up paying for remedial courses when they're there, because we're not getting them ready. They're paying for remediation, mostly children facing that, or young adults facing that challenge of poverty, and we're going to dig them in deeper, make them pay for remediation when they get to college. So for starters, we got to do better on the BPS end, but one way we can do that is to create strong partnerships with our community colleges that begin earlier, get our young people taking college-level courses earlier, get our young people having internships and externships in real workplaces connected to programs that they could ultimately take and study at our community colleges. It's vital that we make these partnerships work. We hope that the new partnership between Madison Park and Roxbury Community College is going to work. But what we're doing right now, we can say 600 young people, but if they're showing up unprepared, we're not doing anyone any justice.
All right, John Connolly, thanks. Mike Ross.
Thank you. I would take a page out of Virginia's book. What they're doing is they're offering families an opportunity to get college-level courses in their high schools that actually take money off the bill for their college, for their next 4 years of college. So instead of paying for 4 years, some families are paying for 3 years or 2.5 years. The same with associate's degrees, doing 1 year in the high school and 1 year in the college. Imagine how much money could be saved. But that's not enough, because we also have kids who aren't going to go to college. That's where Madison Park comes in. Madison Park needs to be the greatest tech-folk high school in the city, and at night it needs to reopen for a place where parents and grandparents can get job training skills as well.
You also want to lengthen the school day to better prepare some kids.
That's correct. I'd like to fill those 2 hours with art, music, gym, computer science, physical education, things that I can still remember as a student were keeping me involved and keeping me engaged in my school.
John Barrows.
You know, the governor's put out a pretty compelling vision, along with Mayor Menino, on the Roxbury Community College and Madison Park relationship. And that partnership has worked in North Carolina, in fact, where when you matriculate into the high school, you're also matriculating into the community college. And you are able to take your high school degree and your associate's degree through one swift move seamlessly, But we also need to engage our employers. We have 1,000 jobs open in the Longwood medical area every day. And we need to make sure that our VOTEC school, partnering with our community college school, is putting people to work.
Well, what's not being done now?
Well, the curriculum is not working, for one, because we're not graduating students and they're ready for the jobs. So informing our curriculum through a partnership with their employers is important. And we're not doing it, and other states are doing. North Carolina is one we could follow.
All right, John Barrows. Bill Walzak.
Yes. One of the problems with our community colleges is that they are failing. They are graduating very few people. Of the children, of the students that are in there, very few actually graduate. What we need to do is really revamp our community colleges. We need to have community colleges that are actually aligned with the jobs that are needed to be filled and what kind of skills. At Codman Academy, which is one of the schools that I founded, one of the things we found was that students oftentimes drop out of those schools because they're not being trained. And what we need to do is look at certificate programs out of those schools that are capable of putting people into more technical jobs.
So are you saying that the 600 kids per year who are going right now to Roxbury and Bunker Hill community colleges are not getting their money's worth?
Yes, I'm saying that because our curriculum is not aligned with the needs of the job community right now. And what we need to do is make sure that our community colleges are aligned with the job needs of our community, of our city.
All right, Bill Walczak,
I'll
Charlotte
just say
Golar
that
Ritchie.
both RCC and Bunker Hill have two new leaders at the helm. That's pretty exciting for those institutions. And we know that RCC is partnering with Madison Park around voc ed, and both institutions, I'm sure, have strong partnerships here with UMass so that students can move on from a 2-year college into a 4-year college. I would say, you know, our young people need mentors. They do need support and tutoring and help with their writing and their math studies and things like that. I think Year Up is a wonderful program where young people can have the experience in the workplace, working in a professional setting, understanding the soft skills that will also make them successful. And they need help with financial aid, frankly, so that they're not going to have the worry of whether or not they're going to be able to afford to stay in college.
Okay, Marty Walsh.
I think one of the things that we have to do here, a lot of these kids that are going to the colleges don't have an understanding of what they want to do. So I want to work with the business community to identify the needs that these businesses need in the city of Boston and set up a training program in our high schools, in our community colleges, so we can begin to train some of these young people so as they move into the community college aspect, they have a goal as far as graduation.
All right, that was Marty Walsh. We're going to move on to the next question now, Meghna.
Just to remind everyone, you're listening to a 2-hour forum with the candidates who wish to become the next mayor of Boston, here on 90.9 WBUR, Boston's NPR news station. Our next question will go to Charles Yancey, who has joined us. Welcome. And just a reminder, Mr. Yancey, you'll have 1 minute to answer this question. It's estimated that well over a quarter of Bostonians pay more than 30% of their income on housing. Mayor Tom Menino wants to build 5,000 units of new affordable housing and 25,000 units at market prices. How much additional housing do you favor in the city, and at what ratio of affordable housing to market rate housing?
Hello. I'd like to thank you for hosting this program along with my friend Bob. My name is Charles Yancey. I'm running for mayor of Boston because I believe Boston can be an even greater city than what it is today. With regards to your question, I would favor a more ambitious program of housing development in the city of Boston. In the 1950s, we had a population of 801,000. Based on the 2010 census, it was 617,194. We have room to grow, and I would favor a more aggressive housing program, and I would require that at minimum 1/3 of the new housing be for low-income residents, so that we are not faced with the situation where we have too many of our long-term residents who are displaced from housing because of increasing costs.
Bill Walczak.
I think there's a problem with it in the terms of 30,000 units not being sufficient to be able to keep the lid on housing prices in Greater Boston. I see this as an issue that needs to be handled as a region. If we are willing to work with the partner towns and cities that are in Greater Boston to be able to achieve a goal, we should be able to triple that number so that we can keep the lid on housing prices, which is driving out so many of the people from Boston and making it so difficult for our recent graduates from college to be able to stay here.
But
I think it's also
what changes would you specifically make in Boston as mayor?
In Boston, one of the things I would do differently in terms of, because I don't think we're going to be able to achieve the kind of numbers just in Boston. But one of the things that's really missing from this is good rate, not market rate and not low-income housing. It's that middle housing that's really missing from this. There's so many people that cannot afford to live in Boston who are neither rich nor poor.
Mike Ross.
The growth of population is growing faster than our rate of housing development. Everyone wants to come to a city, and especially Boston. This is the metropolitan revolution. It's happening here. So we have to plan in every single one of our neighborhoods and rapidly increase housing throughout. We only think of housing creation in the core of our city. There are transit lines that run all the way down to Hyde Park, from Dorchester to Mattapan to Hyde Park, that have no housing on either side of them, that are crying out for transit-oriented development. I would do many more 80-20 projects. I would have on-site affordability on every single housing project, a 15% minimum, and I think we need to build and can get to a city that houses 1 million people by 2025.
Daniel Connolly.
Sorry I was late, stuck in traffic. The next mayor really has to do something about this traffic problem.
We gotta
I know this is a housing question, though, and I embrace Mayor Menino's goal of 30,000 new units by 2020, and I would strive, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected mayor, to increase that number. I believe it's a pressing matter for the economy. I've spent a lot of time talking to the young professionals who are enlivening our city but enriching our economy. I'd say about half of them don't live in the city and want to. And we don't want to lose them to other cities. We are competing for their talent. We can't afford a brain drain here in Boston. So it's an imperative for our economy as well. We need to build more moderate workforce housing. I agree with Mike. Transit-oriented housing out in the outlying neighborhoods, because inside the urban core, downtown, too expensive for almost everybody. And I would strive to do that if I'm fortunate enough to be elected mayor.
John Barrows.
You know, I agree we need a smart growth approach. That's a regional approach to housing. But for Boston, we need to create mixed income neighborhoods. We've got to make sure that we understand where the stock of affordable housing is, how long it's going to be affordable for expiring use purposes, and then continue to build so that every neighborhood is accessible to different families. That's what should drive our ratio. Our ratio shouldn't just be flat. We've got to give every income level access, which means we need more than just a low income strategy. We need a middle market strategy, working family strategy, and we also need to make sure that market is growing fast enough to support that kind of affordable housing.
Charlotte Golar-Ritchie.
Sure. During my tenure at the City of Boston as Chief of Housing, we were able, as I said earlier, to get started 18,000 homes and apartments and neighborhoods all over the city, with roughly a third being guaranteed affordable for low and moderate income people. I agree with previous speaker, Councilor Yancey, that at least a third should be the goal for low and moderate income people. We should do more than that if we can. The issue at the heart of the matter is going to be resources. And how will we get federal resources, state resources to support ensuring that these units can be guaranteed affordable, that they're deed restricted, and there's funding going into these units to keep them affordable for the long term. And we see with cuts to CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant, cuts to home funding and elsewhere, that it's very hard. So you have to also have a preservation strategy. Housing that is currently affordable, we need to support its continuation.
John Connolly, you have about 20 seconds.
This is about how we connect a great affordable housing policy to a great middle market housing policy. And we got to recognize that market rate is synonymous now with luxury in Boston. It's just pricing everybody out of the city. So we get the affordable piece done with an inclusionary zoning ordinance and low-income housing tax credit, but the middle market is the tough part because the tax credits aren't there. That's why we need more transparency at the BRA. We need a real plan that will accelerate the approval time so we can bring construction costs down, and we need to get comfortable with more height and density in appropriate places to bring those costs down so we can price to the middle market.
Okay. As time permits tonight, we're going to ask a few lightning round questions, so to speak, a little off the issues, but questions we hope will let all of us know a little bit more about you, the candidates. You have 1 or 2 sentences to answer these, or you get zapped by the lightning. Meghna.
So we'll start down here again. First lightning round question. What is your favorite development project in the city in the last 20 years? Bill Walczak. You get 2 sentences maximum.
Okay, 2 sentences. All right. I mean, I think if we're looking at downtown, I think Rose Wharf, is that 20 years ago? I don't know. Yeah, I think it's 20 years ago.
So
anyway,
Rose Wharf, I've got lightning round truly, so John Connolly.
I'll go with the Trinity Financial Development over at Ashmont Station. It's a good piece of transit-oriented development, and it's priced to the middle market for many of the units.
Charles Yancey.
I love Rose Wharf. I
2
was there
votes
for the
Rose Wharf.
groundbreaking.
John Barrows.
I'll go with the Trinity project at Ashmont.
Charlotte Golar-Ritchie.
So I'm going to pick multi-service centers, Haitian's Multi-Service Center, the Kroc Center, and Vita Aid Community Center.
Felix Arroyo.
Redevelopment of the Ferdinand Building in Dudley Square and what the possibilities that brings to that neighborhood.
Charles Clemens.
I would say the Ferdinand Building because I'm the only candidate that was on the picket line to make sure that project was in compliance.
Michael Ross.
The bold architecture of the ICA Museum on our waterfront, it's a huge statement.
Daniel Conley.
I like the project at Jackson Square, transit-oriented housing that's being developed down there, almost complete.
Marty Walsh.
Davenport Commons, subsidized housing, college living, and market rate housing.
I'm sure the UMass folks who are here with us tonight would say it's the cranes putting the buildings up here, including the new Science Center going up.
It will be shortly.
Why didn't we think of that?
So here's the next question. What's your favorite Boston sports moment? And for this, let's go in this direction. Marty Walsh, you start.
When my Little League team won the championship and they jumped into Dorchester Bay.
Dan Connolly.
Well, when I was in high school, 1975, my senior year, I graduated in 76. Stop laughing, Felix, you baby over there. Bernie Cabo hit the home run in the 8th inning to tie the game, and then, of course, Carlton Fisk hit the home run to win it. In the
Mike Ross.
That first day that I walked into Fenway Park with my father and saw the green, and never would I ever think that I would one day represent it on the Boston City Council.
Charles Clemens.
I'll say volunteering for the Boston Roxbury Raiders and going to the Super Bowl in Florida.
Okay. Felix Arroyo.
Lots to choose from as an 8-year youth sports coach, but as a fan, it has got to be 2004 when the Red Sox beat the Yankees coming back 0-3.
Charlotte Golar-Ritchie.
Well, my two daughters were products of the Boston Public Schools, and they played tennis on the girls' tennis team for Boston Latin, and they had a couple of winning years on that team, and I just was beaming with pride as their mom.
John Barrows.
I'd have to say the Adam Vinatieri kick that set us up with 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. I mean, that was just an amazing moment.
Charles Yancey.
I believe it was 1967 Red Sox winning the pennant.
John Connolly.
I love John Barrows. I'm going with 2001 Adam Vinatieri field goal, first Patriots Super Bowl. I was sitting in the end zone where the field goal went through, and I cried like a baby.
Ooh. Good for you. Bill Walczak.
I could say the Walczak hook in the famous game that 6 of us played in, but what I'll say is the mitt incident between Varitek and A-Rod.
All excellent answers, but I'm sorry you're all wrong. The correct answer is the Red Sox World Series win next month.
All right, good one.
Amen. Okay, back to the questions, I think.
Sure. There's actually one more lightning round question, shall we? Because these may be the best answers I've heard tonight so far. So we'll start over here with Bill Walczak again. Last lightning round question for this time around. What's your favorite open space in Boston?
Let's see. The park in front of my house that I've been protecting and cutting the grass for the last 30 years. It's called Savin Hill Park. It's a wonderful location. It's the kind of place where I would love to see more development of it in terms of its protected quality.
John Conley.
Franklin Park. I love to go there with my family, and just a great place.
Charles Yancey.
I would say the Audubon Society's Nature Center in the heart of Mattapan is going to be right next to where we're going to build a brand new high school for our children.
John Barrows.
I guess John Conley says what I say. I have to say what John Conley says. It's Franklin Park. Franklin Park, the zoo, the golf course, picnics. It's amazing.
Charlotte Golar-Ritchie.
Spent many happy evenings, days at Pope John Paul Park in Dorchester.
Felix Arroyo.
I have to say Jefferson Park in Jamaica I coached many games there for teenagers and playing baseball.
Charles Clemens.
Franklin Park, golf course, cookouts, family reunions. And then I got to remember when I was 13 years old, my father's Galaxy 500, driving around the Franklin Park, learning how to drive.
Mike Ross.
I'm going with the Boston Common. A group of us we believed that we could improve it and make it better. We went to New York City. We brought back ideas, and we did, and it's back.
Franklin Park Golf Course. If you want to see a place in the city where all types of people mingle so freely and wonderfully, go to Franklin Park Golf Course and play a round of golf. Now, mind you, I haven't done that this year, and I miss it, but that's where my favorite
Marty
open
Walsh.
space.
When we were kids, my father would load us in the car with my uncle and his family, and we'd drive to what was our Cape Cod growing up, and that was Castle Island. And we would go down to Castle Island. I remember being in Castle Island in 1976 when the tall ships came in.
Okay, Marty Walsh, thank you. Now to the other questions, and this one is to John Barros. Figures show that as of 2010, 53% of Bostonians were people of color. Do you believe that police leadership in the city of Boston should match that diversity? And if so, what would you do and how long would it take?
I absolutely believe that not only the police department leadership needs to reflect the diversity of the city, but all of the departments in the city need to reflect the diversity of the city. The police department in particular, though, their job is to protect and serve. And one of the most important things in that role is trust, relationships. Building relationships and trust with the community is critical. And you cannot do that if you don't represent the community. You have to have the competencies, you have to have the relationships that the police department needs. So I will, in fact, continue to invest, and I like the suggestion, the advice that comes from our current commissioner, continue to invest in the training of police officers to make sure we have a pipeline of people who are ready to jump up in the ranks and take leadership. We also need to make sure that we are addressing the civil service exam. It is not the right tool to pick leadership for the police department. We've got to deal with that with the state. And then lastly, we've got to create the right pipelines in our community of people who are going to apply for those jobs.
Okay, lots of people want to jump in. Mike Ross is first.
You know, we don't have a single woman at the senior superintendent level in our police department, and not one captain in all of our district stations is a captain of color. That's a problem, and that goes well beyond just the civil service exam. There were opportunities for the leadership of the police department to promote and put women and people of color in leadership positions, and they didn't. And so at the very top of our leadership of our police department has to be the same commitment that many of us up here share around diversity.
Okay, Felix Arroyo.
Absolutely, the police department must look like the communities and the neighborhoods and the people that it protects and it serves. It's a key component to community policing, along with walking the streets and bicycling the streets. We must be diverse in race, we must be diverse in gender, we also must be diverse in languages spoken to make sure that we can have conversations with everyone in our community. You know, there's one of those things. I think we should judge all the candidates based on our own track record, and I'm happy to share mine. I have 19 staff members right now. 16 of them are people of color, 12 are women, including my chief of staff and my campaign manager. That's what a Mayor Arroyo administration would look like. I'm committed to diversity, not just saying it today, I'm committed to doing it in my own actions.
Charles Clemens is next.
Thank you. We have to celebrate the diversity of our community. As you stated, as been stated, the U.S. Census stated in 2010 that people of color are 54% of the population, and that's why I was the first candidate to come out and say that I would remove the current police commissioner of the Boston Police Department. And as a former Boston police officer, that was one of the reasons why I left the police department in 2000 on July 4th to make that my Independence Day, because it's time for us to start doing the right thing. As Councilor Ross stated, we have captains over districts where we have the majority people of color, and it's not right and it's not fair that we have white captains that are in charge of these districts.
Bill Wozak.
I think if you look at how senior leadership teams are formed across the board in the for-profit, nonprofit sector here at the university, I can't imagine a scenario in which we would make a determination as to what that senior management looked like based on a numerical test score. I think we need to change the civil service exam so that leadership, that superintendent can actually assemble a team that's going to lead the Boston Police Department based on criteria such as, chemistry with other leaders, ability to achieve goals, and diversity, including what they're able to bring together so that they can reflect the community. I've been able to do that my whole life and be able to get not just excellent leadership, but also diverse leadership, and that's something that obviously can happen if we get away from the civil service numerical exam.
Okay, Dan
Bob?
Connolly.
In a city like Boston, as diverse as Boston, all city departments should reflect the diversity of the city. I agree with John entirely, but probably no department more is this an imperative than the police department, which is dealing with the people in a very different way than most other city departments, and it must reflect the diversity of Boston at all levels of command. It is a pipeline issue. I also agree with John on that position. As district attorney, I know that for many African American and Latino and Asian law students, for example, they don't immediately think of law enforcement or prosecution as a career. So we spend a lot of time recruiting talented young African American, Latino, and Asian lawyers to consider our office. And as a result, we may be the most diverse public law office in the city, certainly most diverse law office in the city, let alone public law office.
Charlotte Golar-Ritchie.
Okay, so I don't want it to be redundant here and repetitive, but I do think this is something that has to be a priority, not just for the BPD, Boston Police Department, but for all agencies. But when we talk about the police department, we do talk about the civil service exam. I personally don't have any trouble with people having to take an exam to get into the police department, but a promotional exam that determines whether or not you're going to be a real strong leader, supervisor, seems to be problematic to me. So I would want to revise that way of assessing who makes a strong, effective leader in the Boston Police Department.
Okay, Charles Yancey.
Bob, in the police department and in the fire department, more than 85% of the top paid salary positions are occupied by white males in a city that's 53% people of color. I'm the only candidate up here who's been challenging every department head for 30 years on the issue of diversity. And I'm very pleased to hear that a couple of my colleagues on the city council are finally paying attention to this issue. But we must ensure that diversity exists in the police department, the fire department, and virtually every major department and every department in the city government.
And John Connolly.
I agree with everything that's been said. We should have a program at Madison Park that focuses on criminal justice and public safety, links to a 2-year or a 4-year college, and then guarantees entrance into our cadet program so that young people at 14 could see that someday they can be a Boston police officer. Part of the solution. Got to take care of the command staff, too.
All right. There are only 3 possible answers to this question. Ed Davis is the Boston Police Commissioner. You are either in favor of him staying, in favor of him leaving, or you're undecided. Bill Walczak, which is it?
Staying.
John Connolly.
Undecided.
Charles Yancey.
Leaving.
John Barros.
It needs a full review.
Charlotte Golar-Ritchie.
Undecided, full review.
Staying.
Felix Arroyo. Stay, did you say?
Yeah, staying.
Charles Clemens.
Leave. Look at his track record.
Michael Ross.
Undecided.
Dan Connolly.
Staying.
Full
Marty Walsh.
review.
Say it
Full
again.
review, undecided.
Okay, thank you.
Well, on to another light issue in Boston. Just to remind everyone, this is 90.9 WBUR, and tonight's Mayoral Forum. Let's turn next to Charlotte Golar-Ritchie, and we're going to talk about casinos a bit. If voters, either in East Boston or citywide, approve a casino, and if it also wins approval from the Gambling Commission, what steps would you take as mayor to mitigate social costs?
To mitigate social costs?
Yes.
I mean, we absolutely need to bring in our public health commission and those who work in public health to ensure that gambling addiction is something that we're going to work against. We don't want people to become addicted to gambling. That is the biggest issue that gets raised about this casino. Even though we've had gambling at that site for many, many years at Suffolk Downs, but people worry about that. The other thing that people worry about is crime. They worry about organized crime, increasing crime. That's a problem. So I think that's a social ill that we want to mitigate, and I would absolutely have to work with our diverse police force to deal with that issue. Those are 2 examples. There are others, certainly.
Bill Walczak.
Well, the most important thing we can do to mitigate the effects of the casino is to make sure that we don't have a casino. The reality of a casino is that we're going to see an increase in crime rate. We're going to see vice. We're going to see a doubling of gambling, problem gambling within 10 miles of Boston. We know that from data that comes from other sources. What amazes me is that I'm the only person up here that's willing to strongly take a stand on that and say that if elected, I will stop that casino, because the casino is going to be extremely damaging, and especially damaging to low income. We're here to talk about income disparity. Income disparity is about making sure that low income people and working class people don't have $2.5 million a day taken out of their pockets, which is the plan of the Suffolk Downs Casino.
And what would you say to the people who would be looking forward to having jobs at these casinos?
I would say that let's build an innovation district over there that produces jobs that actually pay a living wage, as opposed to the casino wages, which is $22,400 per year on average.
Mike Ross.
I don't like casinos either, but that decision unfortunately was made by our governor and our state legislature, and it's done. And my problem with Bill Walczak's argument is, okay, you stop the casino. Congratulations. Now we have a casino 7 feet from the neighborhood of Charlestown we won't get any resources from. Now what? When you're mayor of the city of Boston, you can't just say things that sound good. You have to stand up, and you have to take some real tough stands.
From a bright guy, that's about the most tortured logic I think I've heard in a long time. This question on whether or not we have a casino in Boston is a monumental question, and we should all be voting on it. And tomorrow, the city council is empowered to take up that question, and they should. This ought to be a citywide vote, and we ought to promote a vigorous debate. This is going to change the character and the culture in our city, and to deny 95% of us the right to weigh in on that is just plain wrong.
Let me ask you, though, regardless of where the casino is, if it's anywhere near Greater Boston, the social costs are coming. So to come back to this question, what would you do to mitigate those social costs?
I'm not at all convinced that the current mitigation package does in fact mitigate the social costs that we know are coming. There will be an increase in crime. Casinos are not producers, they are consumers. They consume everything in their wake. Small business, there'll be problems there. So I'm not entirely convinced that this mitigation package, which some people see as eye-popping, really does the job. So we need a citywide debate on this question. We ought to all be involved in this.
Dan, you in
Charles
favor?
Clemens. Charles Clemens, if I may.
Charles Clemens. It's about doing the right thing. It's a known fact that when you set up a casino in inner cities, you have violence, you have drug addiction, you have a family disease, and as I stated earlier, when you have the breakdown of the family, you have the breakdown of the community. So it's about doing the right thing. So I am against the casino, and I've always said that.
Marty Walsh.
I want to answer the question that was asked to us. The first thing in the legislation that was there will be signs posted in the casino about gambling anonymous, something that other casinos around the country don't have. There's also going to be limits on the machines in the casino. And we also have a ban list, as people who have addiction problems will be can put themselves on a ban list for lifetime and never be put on there. And right now in Massachusetts, we currently fund gambling addiction services at about $250,000. With the casino put in to be a $5 million a year program at the Department of Public Health to be able to assist folks with gambling addictions, which, by the way, are out of control today, which, by the way, haven't been funded to what they need to be. So this money would be much needed.
Go back to Bill Walczak.
I think it's important. This is going to change the culture of Boston forever. This issue of having a casino here is going to make sure that we are, changing Boston, and the greatness of Boston is going to be under attack. I think it's really important that all of us up here take a stand on it. I'd like to know where all of our candidates are on this issue, because we know that it's become a big issue because we've seen the polling on it. And I'd like to hear from Dan and John exactly where you stand on this issue.
Bill, one of the things that I think we have learned on this campaign is the citizens of Boston don't like to be told how to think, told what to do. They want to be heard. I've heard you talk about transparency. I've talked about it. All of our colleagues here have as well. We've talked about inclusion. We talk about the BRA and the people not being heard. Look, I think you can probably tell by the way I talk about my concerns about a casino how I'm going to vote. But that's not important, really. I'm not going to tell the folks out here how they should vote, and I don't think you should either, quite honestly. But I think We ought to be talking about a citywide, vigorous debate. Let's talk about this as a city. Do we want to change the culture and character of our city? Let's vote on a citywide vote tomorrow, City Council.
But if we want to change the character of our city, then we have to make sure that we look at the best interests of the residents. We're talking about having a strong community. How can you have a strong community when you have people that are in poverty and you know within that 10-mile radius, they're going to go and gamble their last bit of money that they have? We're
Charles
talking
Clemens,
about doing
thank
the right
you for
thing.
that. Thank you for that. I just want to turn quickly to John Connolly because the question was asked directly of him as well.
I'm deeply concerned about the host community agreement. I read it, and I see very vague language around addiction and how it will be handled. Other than that, it says it will be the casino's responsibility, which concerns me deeply. I'm also concerned about reports that I read today that the revenue figures may not actually be accurate. We're going to have a hearing in the City Council tomorrow. I intend to ask all of those questions and more to make sure that we're having a full public discussion about all of these major concerns on the casino.
Mike Ross, last couple seconds to you.
You know, if I thought that a citywide vote would stop this casino, I would be the first person advocating for it. I live in Mission Hill. There are people in East Boston that are actually going to have to live with this thing. And if it's not going to be in East Boston, it's going to be right next to us anyways. Dan Conley has said that to stop the casino in Everett, he would sue the city of Everett. Now, Dan's an attorney, and I think he knows better. I'd love to know how he sues the city of Everett to stop them from having a casino. But the reality is the reason why you don't have a citywide vote and you have an East Boston vote is because in the end, they really are the people that are going to have to live with this thing. And the people, and myself that lives in Mission Hill and others who live in other parts of the city, it's not going to feel the same if it's in Everett or if it's in East Boston, but it sure will for the people of East Boston.
Mike really twists himself into a pretzel when he talks like this.
But let's
you know, only this. I'll use every legal means necessary as the mayor if I'm elected to stop a casino in Everett, if a casino in East Boston is voted down by all of us here in the city. And let's not forget, there is another proposal, Milford, that's still out there. Okay, that's perhaps a best place if we are stuck with a casino in Eastern Massachusetts. Maybe that's where it best belongs.
But Everett's already voted for their casino.
Let's stay on this for just one more quick question. As Dan Connolly points out and John Connolly points out, the Boston City Council is going to be addressing this issue starting tomorrow. Put yourselves on the record. You've seen the polling in just the last couple of days. A couple of polls out saying 60% to 2/3 of the city residents across Boston want to be able to vote on this casino, not just leaving the decision up to East Boston residents. So, citywide vote or East Boston vote, which do you favor, Marty Walsh?
The most impacted community is East Boston. It should be an East Boston only vote.
Dan Connolly.
Citywide vote.
Mike Ross.
East Boston.
Charles
Boston.
Clemens. Felix Arroyo.
Most impacted neighborhoods, East Boston. Imagine a citywide vote where the city votes yes and East Boston votes no. No one here would feel good about that. East Boston deserves the last and final say what happens in their neighborhood.
Charlotte Golar Ritchie.
That's absolutely right. Felix is right about that.
John Barrows.
East Boston can have the final say in a citywide vote where East Boston is given a weighted vote. If East Boston votes it up, it just can't pass. It's got to go to the rest of Boston. The rest of Boston's got to look at it. It's going to affect the whole city.
Charles Yancey.
Sounds like John Barrows has been listening to me about the way to vote for East Boston. I believe that the entire city of Boston should weigh in on this issue. We will be responsible for much of the infrastructure, public safety services, and public health services, so I think the entire city should weigh in with a way to vote for East Boston if possible.
Okay, John Connolly.
East Boston will have to live with this casino in a way no one else in the city will. I understand it will impact the whole city, but it will impact East Boston in a far more disproportionate way. They should decide.
Bill Walzak.
There are hundreds of thousands of people on the subway line who will be able to get to Suffolk Downs in order to gamble away their earnings. And on top of it, it's not the East Boston Fire Department, Police Department, or Public Health Commission. It's Boston. We are going to pay for this, and we're going to pay for it royally if it goes through. It has to be a citywide vote.
I would call that a healthy split.